to speak. If you need technical assistance during this session, you can either start a private chat with me. Down at the bottom is also my phone numbers. Yes, I have more than one. Also, if you'd like a certificate of attendance, you can request one by emailing me, and I will generate that and get that out to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Charisse.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so as I shared as we were beginning, you have two great colleagues of yours who are joining us this afternoon who are leaders in the work that we are doing with the state work group on AB 86. We have Donna Burns, who is the Dean at Mount San Antonio College, and Dr. Bob Harper, who is the Director at Campbell Adult and Community Education. And the two of them will be guiding us through this webinar, which has objectives similar to part one of this webinar, which was to give you quick updates of what's happening since we last met about 6 weeks ago, and where the progress is around the state on AB 86 planning, and then to give you the opportunity to engage with them in this presentation by sharing planning activities and ideas that are happening in your regions, and seeing how we can best use that information together to continue planning the future of adult education. There will be opportunities for you to respond to a number of questions throughout, and then at the end, an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might have. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our amazing and outstanding presenters to get us started. Bob and Donna, over to you.
Thank you, Charisse. So, as Charisse just said, this is a continuation of a conversation we started a few weeks ago. And what we did is we went through the chat recording of people's comments that they typed in at the last webinar, and we identified themes that we thought there seemed to be interest in further discussion. And so you see on your screen the topics that emerged from the last webinar. A little more discussion. You were interested in discussing further the plan objectives 1 and 2, data, engaging our partners, and some things that emerged from the narrative portion. Managing widespread collaboration, how we're working on our collaboration locally. Balancing our local perspective with our state perspective, dealing with Plan Objective 4, which is addressing the gaps, and then moving forward and connecting beyond our local region as we do the work. And so as we get going, I want to review just very quickly the plans must address 5 program areas, basically ABE, ESL citizenship, adults with disabilities, short-term CTE, and apprentices. And then there are 7 objectives that must be dealt with for each of these 5 program areas. One is the evaluation of what is now, evaluation of the needs in your region, the plans to integrate programs, aligning them, finding those touch points, plans to address the gaps in your region, plans to accelerate a student's progress in their educational goals, plans to collaborate on professional development, and plans to leverage existing regional structures, particularly with partners. So those are the 7 objectives that have to be done for each of the 5 program areas. Bob?
So this is Bob. Again, I want to welcome you in a really busy time of the year. It's good to see the participants here, and as was stated, some of these are familiar names, and the format really is to give you an opportunity to respond. So in a little bit, when we get to an interactive part of the process, you're going to see a chat pod to the right. So warm up your typing fingers. We want to hear from you. Just to reinforce then again some of what Donna said about those objectives for the plan. The first 3 objectives are due on July 31st, identification of the current program area offerings in both systems, identification of the need in the region, in the local community, and identification of gaps and the cost to fill those gaps. And obviously that fourth objective requires a lot of work. And one of our observations was that this first deliverable, we need to remember, is a work in progress. It's just the progress to date. Donna?
And so since the last webinar, we wanted to mention briefly that the AB86 work group has posted some revised data tables. You all should have seen email from the AB86 work group. If you didn't see it, all you have to do is go to the AB86 website, and the updated revised data tables are posted in the certification of eligibility materials part. And just a reminder that the AB86 website is the place to go for technical support specifically. And there's a lot of other forums that are available, including this one, for other kinds of networking and support and discussion like we're providing today. You'll notice if you visit those data tables, just a reminder, there are tables specific to partners, and the AB86 legislation has mandated that partners be included in regional plans. Partners are those that are not member school districts or community college districts, but might be community-based organizations, WIBs, and other library literacy programs would be examples of partners. And then there is a part of the objectives, one in particular, that talks about narrative describing adequacy and quality of the programs. So this is sort of an introduction to our first interactive opportunity, and as Bob mentioned, we want to use a lot of time today on letting you interact, and we have a couple of leading questions that Bob's going to lead you on.
Yeah, so you see to your right that chat pod specifically to specific to these questions. So the first one is what strategies are you using to engage with regional partners? As Donna reinforced, that their legislation specifically calls out partners and has the requirement to contribute information gathered from them. So what strategy are you using with these partners to gather their data and access their services? Are they helping to identify gaps? That's the first question. I see Bill and Kathleen are beginning to give us their wisdom or respond. It's interesting, Kathleen. So sort of these town hall meetings sort of open to more than just community-based agencies who might be partners, to other interested stakeholders, the public.
I'm curious whether in some of your regions are your work groups, like, do you have work group one for each program area that they're reaching out individually by program area, or are you trying to do it as one whole region as well?
And by work group, Donna, you mean in the program areas?
The program team, the program areas, yeah.
Right. So Bill similarly has that sort of more general convening. I think in our region we're I think we're calling it a retreat, but we're doing that as well, to have all the partners come together, both to give information, but obviously that's part of the research, to use them in structured ways as a focus group.
So Kathleen and Teresa, we're trying both as well in our local region. The program areas are reaching out if they believe the partners are specific to a program, and then they are we're engaging as a whole in bringing the larger group partners probably to some sort of a convening pretty soon.
Right, and the east side is our region. They're also talking about that larger convening. I wonder too if the definition of partner is more than just someone who is related to or delivering the services in the 5 areas. If you know, more general support from the community, are they partners? Are they being interviewed or addressed as to their ability to help identify need?
Well, certainly helping identify need.
Right. And in some conversations, I've heard that sort of distinction between those who are directly connected to the delivery of service in a program area and sort of a more general interest, like employers, Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, Donna says exactly the workforce and employers that the WIB is the convening agent. Right?
Did the WIB put the survey together, or did your teams put the survey together? A couple of you are doing surveys. Bill and Donna mentioned
Judy.
surveys.
And it seems a very common thing is to group work groups around the program areas. Interesting that they're in Grossmont. They've already identified a sort of a status and called them councils.
Huh. Oh yeah, I see that now.
It's interesting. You say your district put the survey together. Your district alone or working with the other members? And the apprenticeship question is I mean, it's there in the legislation, and it is an interesting question. I know that in our region, the region I'm working in, when we put together the program areas, we put together apprenticeship and CTE just because of an affinity and alignment. And the truth is, not a lot of apprenticeship programs, either large A or small A, were being delivered in our region.
Ours is also fairly small. One of our members, and we have 10 members in our consortium, one of them is stronger on apprenticeships, but the rest of us, there's not as much going on.
And Kathleen says the same thing. So I've heard that in a couple regions, that sort of this combining apprenticeship and CTE together, and there's certainly a logic. Now, I believe that this webinar in its archive form has these chat pods in them. And just in the interest of time, Donna, perhaps we'll go on to the next question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
So what tools or descriptors have you developed to help you assess adequacy and quality per the first 2 objectives? Those are great words, and then you start applying them. It's interesting, huh? Adequacy and quality. How do you measure that?
I know in our work group, we've talked about adequacy tending toward the notion of is there enough, and quality tending toward the notion of is it good enough, in very general terms, of course.
Right. And don't you think one of the values of the process, or I'm sort of finding that, is to have the members together discussing this. I mean, sort of all the members in dialogue about what does define adequacy and what does define quality.
Yes, and we've heard of some consortia working together on rubrics to help give definition to these. My opinion is that as the regions work on building some basic rubrics to help them engage in this discussion, it will really make for a richer discussion than if there were to be more prescribed definitions coming out from the work group, for example.
And if a consortium has rich dialogue around quality, for example, and what would define it, then that's building capacity moving forward for the future, I would think.
So a question from Kathleen and Teresa, ideas of who's working on rubrics. Bob, I'm pretty sure Joanne's group has been working on them.
Right. I think so Joanne and some of the consultants that they're working with and working in a number of consortia are developing and not satisfied with what they have so far and continuing to improve a rubric around these two themes. And I think eventually, so we'll go back to that notion that what's turned in on the 31st is preliminary, right? Is not in any sense a finished product. And when things are discovered through that initial work, I certainly think the hope is to share those things around the state. So if there are rubrics that are, seem to be right on target, they should be shared. They will be shared.
Yeah. So that, I've just made a note that sharing of rubrics, good practices, I'm reading, would be helpful for a number of people.
Just a comment from my buddy Bill out there about adequacy could relate to the scope of programs that were in place, before the cuts, the sweeps, and I'll go back, and claim that there is plenty of research that shows that all of the programs generating at their optimum back in those days were inadequate to the need then. What do you think, Donna?
And he's typing. Well, he's typing. I bet that he's agreeing with you. Yeah.
Right. Well, now that we have agreement, perhaps we should move on.
Yeah, I keep looking at the time, and we have several interactive things. So
but for me, this is, it's just having this conversation about these issues with you out there who are also working in the region is so important. So moving on.
Okay, and so another topic that we're finding timely now is this notion of managing collaboration when you've got a lot of partners, a lot of members, a lot of people who are interested, and how do we manage that in a positive way and keep it moving forward? So we have to engage in the work locally with our data. We've got a lot of charts to deal with, and then analysis, that whole adequacy, quality, and having meaningful discussions about that. We all know we're not just writing something in response to a grant. We're really building for the future, and so we need to engage seriously. And in that process, we need to be doing what we can to invest in our local members' capacity. In other words, our faculty, our staff, our administrators gaining the skills, gaining the relationships, gaining the trust with one another to build for the future so that we can be doing the work together and not be depending on more grant funds to feed this, but that it's part of who we are as local consortia. And then Bob, I know that you particularly care about this next bullet, so why don't you speak to spending wisely?
Yeah, so the state, in its wisdom and generosity, has legislated this process, this planning process, and given us funds to do it. And I think one of the central intents of it is to really build these relationships, partners, alignments, both personally and systemic, that will go forward and make a difference for the students we care about. And I think in some places our instinct has been, well, there's so much work and I've got all this other work to do, so we'll hire somebody outside of the systems to do that. There's benefit because you might have neutral facilitators, but I just think we need to be mindful about the way the funding is used. Is it used to build a kind of capacity that will last after the consultants have gone? So,
yeah, it's you. Sorry. No, I'll be quiet. It's you.
Yeah. It's us. It's always us, Donna. Pleasure to work with you. So the next question then is, we want to hear from you and have you see each other's responses. So that's a big task to identify and compile this data. What challenges are you finding in compiling and analyzing this data for your report? Donna, what challenges are you finding?
Well, just volume of information and is one of the things. We have, as I mentioned, 10 members, actually 9 I think now, and just fiscal, for example, going back to '08 and then going to more recent years and getting the detail needed by object codes, and you know, it depends on the different districts' accounting data system, and then also it might be a challenge getting the ADA for years that the schools weren't required to submit ADA. But I think a big one is just the scope of it. There's just a lot of work to do, and it takes time, and we found that we needed those in our work group. We have a lot of adjunct faculty involved in the work groups, and they didn't realize at first that they really could be turning to their own administrators for help in this area. And once they connected locally with fiscal people and so forth, it wasn't quite as daunting for them.
Yeah, Kathleen and Teresa, and I presume that's both of you out there sitting together. Yeah, that question continued to come up, is when we're asking for this data, are we getting the same data? So we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, especially as we think about making some observation about what's happening statewide. In a region, you can come to some agreements about those things that you're measuring, but is one consortium measuring the same thing as another consortium? I find that's a real struggle. Yeah, Bill mentions that ADA is sort of easier in the member institutions, or FTES and enrollments from the community colleges. The partners may collect information about what they do in a very different way.
So Bill also, and not to skip over Valeria, but Bill also mentions the agencies that are closed and shuttered and getting their data because it does represent the adults who may not be served anymore. Some of them may probably have gone to other schools in the area, but I don't know what could be done there, if there could be outreach to the districts. Anyway, I know some of our members that the adult school is closed or very, very small compared to the past, but the district is still able to get that data.
And then another, I think this is the third time we've said this, but so the information that comes in on the 31st is preliminary, right? As we see things that don't make sense or there are gaps or then I think we have time to go back and dig a little deeper. On the ADA issue, I know that in my own institution, I'm an old timer and I remember the old days of wringing out every last minute of attendance in whatever report, and in these past few years, not being as vigilant about that. So the numbers that we're producing for recent years are, even though we've been cut and the scope of program is smaller, I'm sure they're not as, or they don't measure in the same way what was happening in 2007, 2008.
So Valeria,
go ahead.
I just want to go back to Valeria's comment, and I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly. Community colleges and adult schools operate differently. That's one of the challenges, and that's certainly true. What we're finding is that we do have some commonalities when it comes to data, and when we talk about it, we start to sort of translate our vocabulary. Is there anything more specific that you have found challenging in terms of the difference between community colleges and adult schools when it comes to data? Maybe it would, since I'm a CC and Bob's an adult school, maybe we could comment a little more. And then Terry, we have a VESSL career path program that offers some business skills class that would be CTE, and then offers advanced level ESL in its cohort, and we included it in our ESL programs area rather than the CTE area. Now maybe we'll find out if that was the right place to put it or not, but I think that there's a degree of local judgment that you can use based on the population that it is serving.
There's some still typing, but maybe in the interest of time, we should go on to the next question,
Sure.
Donna. Yep.
Sure.
So what I talked about in the previous slide is about building capacity and not selling your watch to the consultant to tell you what time it is. Right? So what strategies are helping build capacity in your region for future collaboration? I know Bill commented earlier that we need to work on genuine relationships. If we farm it out, it can feel discounted. So this is of huge interest to me. What strategies are helping to build capacity in your region for future collaboration?
One of the things I'll say while we're waiting for people to chew on that is, for better or worse, at this point locally, we've really tried to do the work ourselves other than a hired part-time hourly coordinator NAG type of person to be making sure we have agendas and saying, hey, you all agreed you were going to do this, where is it, that kind of thing. Otherwise, we're trying to do the work ourselves, and we're also really trying to bring in a lot of faculty. Each of the program teams has faculty members from each member for each program, and that was very important to us, and I know it's an important state discussion involving the faculty.
In San Mateo, a consortium up the peninsula does something similar, and I think having those faculty leads as a part of the work group really work together to make this project work is by definition building that kind of productive working relationship that could continue. And as Bill says, these are things that we should have been doing before AB 86, but Lord knows there's an incentive that's more critical now. Kathleen and Teresa say that regularly meeting, so the whole notion of having to work together over time, not just one meeting, is building a relationship.
So Kathy has a technical question related to money reporting, and I want to be careful to be sure that, Kathy, that you get the right answer. So if you would email that to the AB86 website, we are really trying hard to stay right on top of those Q&As. I think in general, we're talking any costs that are your costs as a district, you put in the member data tables, and if there are costs incurred by partners, those would go on the partner tables. And then one of the tables I know does, it wants all costs, but there is a table that allows you or asks you to say how much has come from your WEA funds. So that's a separate table. But we can give you more technical help on that through the AB86 Q&A, the website.
And I think we've mentioned it before that any question, or not just asking for technical assistance or a question for clarification, if you have something you want to contribute about what you're finding, send it to the AB86 work group. Those communications really are read by everyone, and the attempt is to respond in a timely manner. And if for some reason you're not getting a timely response, email Donna directly, and she will just...
And I'll forward it to you.
Thank you.
No, we really are trying to take this seriously in the work group and get the turnaround.
So again, in the interest of time, perhaps we should move on. Our next topic slide.
So the next one is balancing, yes. So another challenge and topic of conversation has been the notion of balancing the work we're doing and the input and values and local culture, local realities as we work together regionally, while at the same time doing the work that AB86 is mandating and allowing certain common elements and principles emerge from that work so that it can be scaled to a very, very large and complex state of California. And so there's a balance there. We've got local things, one size doesn't fit all. We really are different in a particular way in our local region that doesn't fit the whole state, but at the same time, we have to have some commonalities of principles and elements statewide. So that's the context of this next couple of questions that we're going to talk about. So that's the question. Maybe you can just think back in the experiences and the conversations and the work you've been doing the last few weeks, couple of months, and have you come up against this issue of hey, this is a local thing, and we're not sure it really fits with the rest of the state, but we can't ignore it here locally. Can you tell us about that, if that's been your experience? And Bob, I don't know if you might want to comment as well.
It's an interesting question because on the one hand, I think the intent is absolutely to explore locally, and it's what our governor's principle is, and so many initiatives in the state is sort of push down decision making to the local level and have the local realities drive the analysis and the planning. And on the other hand, we're charged with creating a new system of education for the state, a new way that the systems work together to benefit the adult learners in ways better than before. So we need both. I mean, to use some of the language that I think is not necessarily useful, top down or bottom up, but it's both, right? So how do you balance that? What strategies do you see? And several of you are on with us this afternoon who haven't contributed, so please feel comfortable to go to that chat box and type. Balancing local realities with what we need to collect as some sort of systemic understanding for the whole state. As Donna says, a large and complex state. So in both instances, I think I see, well, I resonate with Bill's comment about that dedicated funding stream is something important both to, almost by definition, both to the local reality and what might be mandated for the whole state.
So
Donna,
Kathleen,
do you want to respond to maybe Kathleen?
Yeah, I just wanted to call it out. Kathleen writes, our consortium has embraced focusing efforts on the program areas identified, the 5 program areas, and it's a shift for some regions. So Kathleen, can you tell us more about that? Are you saying that for some regions they are more accustomed to the 9 or 10 program areas and they're being challenged to let go of them, or tell us more about that, if you would.
Again, as we're waiting for some responses, they're seeing Bill's comments about, so we've been, some of us have felt in a storm for so many years, and what an opportunity to focus on what's possible and not to anticipate some sort of erosion or reduction to what we care about. I certainly see the AB 86 process as fostering that kind of hope and redirection of one's ideas about what could happen in the future.
Okay, so both Kathleen and Bill are talking about one of the balancing acts is shifting, in some cases, shifting some of the categories that used to be part of the 9 or 10 into fee-based or other approaches to offering it. And recognizing that at least for AB 86 we've only got the 5 to work with, and that's the reality in terms of a state new money focus at least.
And there's that interesting question about what is new money, how we define that, right? What is, all right, so Judy, I presume you're well, no, you're in an adult school, so that anxiety is real. And is it anxiety about there being delivery of services at all in 2015-16? Wonder what's underneath some of that anxiety. Right.
So Robin mentions that parent ed is a concern in their agency and sustaining it, and that was a challenge for us. Some of our members so far still are able to offer it. Here at our community college, we needed to find a different way of offering parent ed a few years ago during the downturn, and so we partnered with the local city recreation departments. We've got a lot of different cities in our district, and worked with them on a transition plan where the cities actually took it over as part of their community ed, and it was well received in our case.
And several of the comments, this apprehension or understanding how to adjust to the 5 program areas in AB 86.
Another thing, since some of the conversation does seem to be about the program areas that are outside the scope of AB 86, one of the things we have been working on for a few years now is taking a look at the courses in our older adult program and redoing our curriculum so that it has a focus in developing new income streams for older adults, and actually involves some vocational training, even along the lines of developing a cottage industry income stream, and learning skills that would lend themselves toward a cottage industry, and creating curriculum that incorporates business and marketing and retailing skills in with that, so that they can actually be approved as short-term vocational training. And of course, not all of our older adult population is interested in that, but it has met a need for some.
Another solution that we've worked on, and I've heard others as well, around parent ed, and this isn't a comprehensive answer in any way, but the whole notion of family literacy and literacy development in context of parent engagement in their children's schools and parenting, and needed to understand developmental principles about children, really are good vehicles of literacy, language development. So for some students, for some populations, a lot of what might look like parenting is actually just like a career context, is a good context for literacy development a lot, or as well. And that's something that seems to be working in my school.
So, Bob, there's a comment that Valeria makes that in some region it's been a challenge to get the AB 86 conversation, to get folks at lower levels of the organizations, for lack of a better term, not just administrators, but a much broader conversation beyond just administrators in the local AB 86 planning conversation.
Right.
Ideas on, I mean, we've got people who are, we've got regions that are doing town hall or all group convenings. We've got some that are really trying to get a lot of different types of employees, faculty, and staff involved in the program areas. Do any of you have ideas on broadening that or helping break through maybe some administrator resistance? Which is what I'm kind of reading into that, maybe incorrectly.
Oh, I don't think you're reading into it. I think you're reading it. I don't know, Valeria, if you had the opportunity to see the webinar on teacher engagement through the AB86 website. That's archived, and that gives great examples of what that could look like. I would imagine a link in an email to appropriate people in a region would be a good thing.
Donna, this is a very time-intensive thing, and we are more challenged in our local consortium. We are more challenged as leaders because we're volunteering our time, really, right, to help it happen and stay engaged. But the grant funding is going more for hourly people to also be involved, particularly faculty and then a facilitator. So we're finding it's a lot of time right now, and we assume that it's going to be a lot of time through the summer and then slack off as the fall comes. And Bill's got an example there.
One of the things I think our steering committee of in our region has felt the need to do is have a longer period of time. So sometimes these shorter meetings aren't enough, and so we're planning on a day retreat to really dig deeper or dig more deeply. And I think that also is the kind of quality time spent that can build those relationships we were talking about.
Okay, Bob, we've got 10 minutes and one more interactive left, so I'm wondering if we shouldn't be moving on.
Agreed.
Here we are. And I think it's you.
So the fourth objective, which is a critical objective clearly, is so what programs are in place for this new and improved adult education delivery system in the future, for the future of California. So some of those elements in that objective 4 are the range of interpretations, various interpretations among the local regions. One of the things that we have experienced is seeing sometimes a delineation of function, and we don't think it's delineation of function as defined in the old days. In fact, one of the phrases I often use is duplication is not redundancy. And the gaps are more than documenting what's been cut in the last 6 years. The sort of interchange that Bill and I had in this webinar that simply what was in place 6 years ago was inadequate to the need. So the gap is not simply documenting something to that level of service, in my opinion. The discussion should be inclusive, and I think with Valeria's comments are about how we get all those interested involved in this process. So should be inclusive. Faculty and partners must be involved as decision makers. So that it is inclusive, it can't discount the notion that those people in decision-making positions, wherever they are, have to be central to the process, because it's systemic, not just relationship, right? And so with that, our other interactive, Donna.
Yes, and so we are still trying to think locally and statewide about helping local consortia see what others are doing. And some of us in some local consortia are simply reaching out to the consortia whose boundaries touch ours and say, you want to get together? You know, just to the other leaders to start with, and share ideas in that way. And I know of a couple of broader discussions among consortia that are taking place through those kinds of natural interactions among your neighbors, you know. So what would you like to know from other consortia? Have you reached out to your consortia immediately around you? Would you find that helpful? What other ideas might you have? So we'll give you a minute of quiet so you can think. A lot of you are typing already.
Donna, you have a very calming voice.
Do I?
Yes.
Oh, I must be good at faking it. So Bill's up first. We have a local AXA regional network meeting, and in those meetings we always share what we're doing, what's working, and what's not. Now for those of us who are community college people, Bob, could you tell us what AXA stands for?
Association of California School Administrators. So beyond just that association, I think the adult school administrators traditionally over the years have met together regionally in those AXA regions to share ideas and confer with each other, right?
And Kathleen says they are sharing rubrics, for example, or they've identified that that's something they'd like to do, and they're reaching out to their neighboring consortia.
We have hired some help to help us with some of the data collection, and there are people who are doing multiple consortia, maybe into the double digits. And so it's an interesting process of both accessing all that expertise and hearing what other people are doing and still owning the process locally.
Mm-hmm. Ron, I know at the last webinar we talked about an ongoing list of the consortia's members and partners, and we are still working on that. Excuse me. And having at least having contact information for school and community college co-leaders, so that people could just email them.
Agreed, Ron. That's absolutely a goal.
So Judy makes a good point that a consulting agency that's working with other consortia as well can be a helpful connecting mechanism.
For sharing best practices or good practices, as we've been trained to say in the work group, but not have it be cookie cutter. So
making a list.
again, keep typing, and I think again, all of the chat is saved and will be archived. We are getting to the end of our presentation. I just enjoyed hearing from you these observations and questions. I hope it was useful.
And let me mention also that as we did last time, we will go through the chat notes from this one as well. And I've got a couple of to-dos on my notepad as a follow-up from comments and requests that emerged. But we'll review that too, and from a work group point of view, and see if there are things that can still be more helpful. So I think this is me. The last two questions that I think are always relevant on the CalPro series. What would you like to see on the next CalPro webinar about the AB86 process? And then the question just prior, what would you like from the state AB86 work group? And just a way to kind of keep them separate. This state work group really tries to focus on technical support and assistance, as well as helping foster the sharing of good practices and anything that would be helpful. But particularly if you have a technical question, it would be most expedient to email or go to the AB86 website. But then there's also what would you like to see in a future CalPro webinar about the AB86 process. So the chat is open if you would like to contribute to those thoughts.
All right. Well, as we wrap up our webinar for this afternoon, I want to thank Bob and Donna again for asking us some critical questions to help us continue our planning process and our critical thinking process as we are moving along with our AB86 plans, with the first round deliverables due July 31st. And as Donna mentioned, we want to continue this conversation still. It is very valuable. Bob mentioned throughout the opportunity to hear from those in the field what they're doing, what's working, what the challenges are, what we can do to make this process more sustainable and more beneficial for you as you are going through it. So please do take us up on this last chat pod, which is off on your right side, and type in your thoughts of what you'd like to see in the next CalPro Admin Forum webinar series around this topic, or around other topics that you'd like us to present as well. The presentation that you saw today is also available for you to download. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see it right there in the center where it says actually to upload the file that's there. So you click on that and you can save it to your computer. And then if you look at the far right in the bottom corner, you'll see an opportunity to provide us some feedback, and there's a web link there for you to complete an evaluation form. So thank you very much again for your participation this afternoon. We will leave the room open for a few more minutes in case you want to download the PowerPoint presentation, or if you want to share some feedback with us in terms of evaluation or future webinar opportunities. Thank you very much again, and we look forward to having you join us soon. Bye-bye.
I wanted to add as well, when the meeting room is closed, it should take you to that evaluation form online. You only need to complete it once. It's just, the link is here on the bottom right in case anybody needed to leave early. Just letting you guys know. When it does open up after the meeting is closed, it might be in a window behind the one you're looking at. So. All right, I don't see anybody else is typing. I'll keep it open for like another minute in case anybody's downloading the documents. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and we hope to see you again.